golden child brother invited my ex to replace me on family vacation after forcing me to cancel. Parents say I'm destroying the family for going no contact, but I'm done being the doormat. I'm 29, and my brother Nick is 32. Growing up, it was always clear that Nick was the favorite. He was the golden boy who could charm anyone, while I was just the dependable one, quiet, independent, and easy to overlook. I've spent years biting my tongue while Nick pushed boundaries and took advantage of people. But this time, he went too far. A few months ago, I went through a tough breakup. I was with my ex Ethan for 5 years, and I thought we had a future. Out of nowhere, he said he needed space to figure things out. That was it. No explanation, no attempt to work through things. I was crushed, but what made it worse was how Ethan handled it after. He stayed in our friend group, acting like we could just go back to being casual friends, while I was left trying to pick up the pieces. Nick didn't make it any easier. He had always gotten along with Ethan, but after the breakup, he went out of his way to keep hanging out with him. I told Nick it made me uncomfortable, and he brushed it off like it was no big deal. Just because you guys broke up doesn't mean I have to stop being friends with him, he said. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the complete lack of care. I should have known he'd take things further. He always does. A few months after the breakup, my parents announced they were planning a family vacation to Mexico for their wedding anniversary. It was supposed to be just the 4 of us, me, Nick, and our parents. I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending a week with Nick, especially after how he'd been acting, but I figured I could suck it up for my parents' sake. One day, Nick casually mentioned he might bring a +1 on the trip. I thought it was his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Kara. They have one of those relationships where they break up every few months, but never really stay apart. I didn't ask too many questions because I didn't care enough to get into it. But then I found out the truth. My mom let it slip during a conversation, almost like she didn't think it was a big deal. Nick's +1 wasn't Kara, it was Ethan, my ex-boyfriend. When I asked her if she was serious, she actually tried to downplay it. Nick said Ethan really needed a break, and we thought it wouldn't bother you. You're over him by now, right? I stared at her, completely stunned. You thought it wouldn't bother me? Are you kidding me? She got defensive, saying they didn't mean to upset me, and that it was just one trip. I told her there was no way I was going if Ethan was invited. Instead of supporting me, she turned it back on me, saying I was being selfish and ruining their plans. It was like I was the problem for not being okay with spending a week with my ex. I canceled my ticket the next day. When I told Nick why, he acted like I was being ridiculous. Ethan's a great guy, he said, like that somehow made it okay. It's not like he cheated on you or anything. Why are you so hung up on this? Hearing that made my blood boil. I told him it wasn't just about Ethan. It was about him constantly crossing lines and acting like my feelings didn't matter. He rolled his eyes and said I was overreacting, that it wasn't a big deal. I thought that was the end of it. I figured they'd go on their trip, and I'd stay home and avoid the drama. But then the pictures started popping up online. The first photo was on Nick's Instagram. It was a group shot, my parents, Nick, and Ethan sitting by the pool holding drinks. The caption read, "Family time in paradise." I felt my stomach tighten as I stared at it. Family? Ethan was sitting there like he was part of something I was deliberately excluded from. Then came more photos. Ethan posted a selfie with my mom at dinner, both of them laughing. Another one of him and Nick on jet skis. Every single picture felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't just that Ethan was there. It was how comfortable they all looked with him. Like I'd been erased from the picture completely. I didn't say anything to them. What was the point? I blocked Nick and Ethan on social media and tried to push it out of my mind, but it was impossible. A mutual friend texted me a screenshot of one of the photos and asked, "Wait, why is your ex on your family vacation?" I didn't even know how to respond. When they got back, Nick called me like nothing had happened. "You missed out," he said. "The trip was amazing. I couldn't keep it in anymore. What the hell is wrong with you?" I snapped. "You thought it was okay to bring Ethan? Do you even realize how messed up that is?" He immediately got defensive. "Oh, come on. It's not like he's your enemy. You need to grow up and move on already. Move on. You brought my ex-boyfriend on a trip meant for our family and didn't even bother to ask if I'd be okay with it. You've made it crystal clear you don't give a damn about me. You're being dramatic," he said, laughing like I was blowing things out of proportion. Ethan's practically family now. He needed this trip more than you did. I hung up. There was no point in arguing with him. Nick would never see my side because he never cared enough to try. This wasn't an isolated incident either. Nick had always been like this, entitled, selfish, and completely oblivious to how his actions affected other people. When I got my first promotion at work, he spent the whole family dinner talking about how his advice helped me get there. He didn't even know I was applying for the role until after I got it, but that didn't stop him from taking credit. When I called him out, he got mad at me for embarrassing him in front of everyone. Another time, he stayed at my apartment for a few nights after a fight with Kara, but it turned into 2 weeks of him treating my place like a frat house. He had people over without asking, moved my furniture around because he didn't like the layout, and didn't clean up after himself. When I finally asked him to leave, he called me unsupportive and stormed out like I was the bad guy. And then there was the time he made fun of me to Ethan during our relationship, joking that I was too uptight and needed to loosen up. Ethan laughed along with him, and I brushed it off at the time, but now I see it for what it was, Nick undermining me for the sake of his own entertainment. The vacation was just the final straw. After I went no contact with Nick, my parents started guilt-tripping me. My mom called, saying, "Do you really want this fight to ruin our family? Nick didn't mean to hurt you. Can't you just let it go?" "Let it go," I said. "He knew exactly what he was doing. You knew too, and you went along with it. Do you even realize how humiliating this has been for me?" She sighed like I was the unreasonable one. Nick said Ethan really needed a break. It wasn't personal. It wasn't personal? I repeated. It doesn't get more personal than this. But sure, let's keep bending over backward to make Nick happy. That's what we always do, isn't it? She started to argue, but I cut her off. I'm done with this. If you want to keep enabling him, fine. But I'm not playing along anymore. I hung up before she could say anything else. Nick didn't take the no contact well, of course. A few weeks later, he sent Ethan to my apartment with a peace offering. A cheap bottle of wine and some half-assed apology on Nick's behalf. I didn't even let Ethan get through his rehearsed speech before slamming the door in his face. If Nick couldn't apologize himself, I wasn't interested. That didn't stop him from trying to push boundaries in other ways. On my birthday, I planned a small dinner with a few close friends, but Nick showed up uninvited with a group of his buddies, claiming it was a surprise party. He ordered expensive drinks and appetizers for everyone, then acted shocked when the bill came and I refused to cover it. "You're really going to be this petty?" he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "This is why you weren't invited," I said, standing my ground. "If you want to throw yourself a party, pay for it." He stormed out, muttering about how ungrateful I was, but I didn't care anymore. Nick also tried to stir up drama online, posting vague statuses like, "It's sad when people let grudges tear families apart. And some people just can't let go of the past." He knew exactly what he was doing, making me look like the villain while playing the victim. Mutual friends started reaching out, asking what was going on. I told them the truth, even showing them screenshots of texts where Nick admitted he knew inviting Ethan would upset me. Most of them sided with me, but a few tried to stay neutral, saying, "You know how Nick is." Yeah, I do. That's the problem. Cutting Nick off hasn't been easy. My parents still act like I'm the one causing the rift, constantly pushing me to fix things. My mom called again recently, using her usual guilt trip tactics. "Nick misses you," she said. "He told me he regrets how things went down. Can't you just talk to him?" "No," I said firmly. "Nick doesn't regret anything. He's just mad I'm not putting up with his crap anymore." "You're being stubborn," she said. "Family is all we have at the end of the day." "Then maybe Nick should start acting like family," I shot back. "I'm not apologizing for standing up for myself." She sighed like she was exhausted by me, and I could feel the familiar anger bubbling up. For years, I let them push me into the role of the easy one, the one who always backed down to keep the peace. But not anymore. Since cutting Nick off, I've started focusing on the relationships in my life that actually matter. Friends who respect me, who don't take advantage of me or treat my boundaries like suggestions. It's been hard letting go of the idea that my family would ever change, but it's also been freeing. Nick might never understand why I've drawn this line, and my parents might always take his side. But for the first time, I don't care. I'm done twisting myself into knots to make everyone else comfortable. I don't know if Nick and I will ever reconcile, but I do know one thing. I'm finally putting myself first. And it feels damn good.